if the most fascinating country you've never truly known holds the keys to our past, present, and future? Imagine a place where a biblical queen's lineage forged an empire, where mountains conceal sacred secrets, and where a tiny coffee bean launched a global addiction. But beyond the myth and the majesty, a vibrant nation of over 130 million people is caught in a high-stakes drama. This is Ethiopia. So Ethiopia has millions of years' worth of history to tell, but the one that we want to focus on started between the 8th and 6th millennia BCE, when pastoralism and agriculture started popping up. As the population grew, an ancient language spoken in this region fractured into the modern languages of the Afro-Asiatic family, which includes the Cushitic, Semitic, and Demotic languages spoken in Ethiopia today. Then, in the 2nd millennium BCE, the use of the plough and cereal grains was introduced, possibly from the region of Sudan. This development allowed people speaking Ge'ez, a Semitic language, to start dominating the rich northern highlands of Tigray. What followed in the 7th century BCE, the establishment of the kingdom of Da'amat. These folks were smart. They controlled lands to the west, gathering high-value goods like ivory, gold, rhinoceros horn, and slaves, and trading them with South Arabian merchants. But around 300 BCE, Da'amat started to fade, mainly because trade routes shifted toward the coast. In its place, a number of smaller city-states arose, which eventually unified under the inland state of Axum. From its base on the Tigray Plateau, Axum became a global player. It controlled the ivory trade, the inland routes, and the key port of Adulis on the Gulf of Zula. Now, culturally, there was a major exchange happening across the Red Sea with the Arabian Peninsula, leading to some truly epic legends, the biggest being that of Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, and the Israelite King Solomon. Their mythical union was said to have produced Menelik I, the progenitor of Ethiopia's long-standing royal dynasty. And by the 5th century CE, Axum was the dominant trading power in the Red Sea region, even minting its own coins. Then came the turning point: Christianity. Through those Greco-Roman merchant communities, the faith of the Eastern Mediterranean reached Ethiopia during the reign of Emperor Ezanas. By the mid-5th century, it was spreading, and the Ethiopian Church made a crucial decision to follow the leadership of the Coptic Church in Alexandria. This meant rejecting the Christology from the Council of Chalcedon in 451, which led to a historic break with the bishops of Rome and Constantinople. At its peak, Axum's influence reached across the Red Sea to the South Arabian kingdom of the Himyarites in what is now Yemen. But nothing lasts forever, right? In the 7th and 8th centuries, the rise of the Arabs cut off Axum's trade with the Mediterranean world. As Axum declined, it moved its centre of power south. One of the formerly subject peoples, the Agau, assimilated the Axumite culture and faith to the point where Agau princes were able to transfer the seat of the empire to their own region of Lasta. This marked the start of the Zagwe dynasty. Despite being accused by later church texts of not being of pure Solomonic stock, the Zagwe kings left an indelible mark. Their capital, Roha, or modern-day Lalibela, is home to 11 churches that were literally hewn out of living rock by order of Emperor Lalibela. The Zagwe's power, however, wasn't complete. Opposition mounted, and in 1270, a nobleman named Yekuno Amlak successfully rebelled. With the support of influential churchmen, he claimed descent from Solomon, thus establishing the Solomonic dynasty, which would last until 1974. To cement this lineage, the Kebra Nagast, which translates to Glory of the Kings, was published in the early 14th century. This collection of legends relayed the birth of Menelik I and provided a powerful basis for Ethiopian national unity, centred on the Solomonic dynasty. So, the now ideologically charged Ethiopian state was ready for the next struggle: the growing resistance from the forces of Islam in its southern and eastern provinces. In the late 13th century, various Muslim sultanates on Ethiopia's southern border fell under the hegemony of Ifat. The Christian emperor, Amdat Seyon, responded with vigour, waging wars in all directions and establishing garrisons to consolidate his newly conquered regions. The balance of power shifted dramatically, though, when a Muslim reformer named Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, known as Ahmad the Left-Handed, took leadership of the sultans of Adal. Trained in modern Ottoman tactics, Ahmad led a brutal jihad, also known as a holy war, against Ethiopia in the 1530s, pushing deep into the central highlands and destroying countless churches and monasteries. Naturally, the emperor had to flee, and the Christian state was on the brink. Salvation came in 1541, when the Portuguese sent 400 musketeers to help train the Ethiopian army. So in 1543, Emperor Galawdewos used a hit-and-run strategy to kill Ahmad in action near Lake Tana, saving the Christian highlands. But even as one threat subsided, another challenge emerged: the widespread migration of the Oromo, a pastoral people from the south. By 1600, they had spread so widely that the emperor limited the government's rule primarily to the Christian Semitic-speaking agriculturalists of the north. Right on the heels of the Oromo migrations, the church faced a religious crisis, because following the Portuguese musketeers, Jesuit missionaries arrived determined to convert Ethiopia to Roman Catholicism. And the emperor at the time, Emperor Susenyos, was actually persuaded to submit to the Pope. As you'd imagine, the nobles, the church, and the people didn't like that, forcing the emperor to abdicate in favour of his son, Fasilides. Fasilides then established a new capital at Gondar, a major trading centre. This city enjoyed a cultural and artistic height in the 17th and 18th centuries, but ethnic, regional, and religious infighting eventually led to the collapse of the central government in 1769. This period is known as the Zamana Massaphent, or Age of the Princes, an era of feudal anarchy where regional princes battled for control, and the farming population suffered immensely. It took a true force of nature to end this age of chaos, and it came with Kasa Hailu. Starting as a successful highwayman and mercenary, Kasa quickly built a formidable, small army. He defeated the last of the powerful regional Oromo lords in 1853, and after consolidating power in the north, he was crowned Emperor Theodros II in 1855. Later that year, he forced the submission of the southern kingdom of Shewa, and by doing so, he laid the essential foundation for the modern Ethiopian country. You've survived the history deep dive, which means you're ready to actually see where all those epic events went down. So, welcome to Ethiopia's geography. When we talk about Ethiopia, we're talking about the largest and most populated country in the Horn of Africa, a relatively compact landmass located entirely within the tropical latitudes. Now look at a map of Africa. You'll see that Ethiopia is a landlocked nation, right in the northeastern part of the continent, bordered by Sudan and South Sudan to the west, Kenya to the south, and then you have Somalia, Djibouti and Eritrea in the east and north. And just how big is this historical giant? Ethiopia covers a massive area of about 426,400 to 432,432 square miles, or 1.10 to 1.12 million square kilometres. Despite its huge size, it's largely rural, though it boasts a massive population, making it the most populous landlocked country in the world. Now this is where the geography gets really dramatic. Ethiopia is truly a land of geographical contrasts, which are immediately apparent if you look at the landscape. Running right down the centre of the country is the magnificent Abyssinian Highlands, or Ethiopian Highlands. This massive elevated plateau complex forms the very roof of Ethiopia and creates one of the most rugged topographies in all of Africa. One of these is Ras Dashen, which soars to 14,930 feet, or 4,550 metres, making it the highest point in the entire country. This is also where you find Lake Tana, a critically important body of water that happens to be the primary source of the Blue Nile River and, ultimately, the mighty Nile River itself. But what literally divides this high plateau? The Great Rift Valley, a massive tectonic trough that runs diagonally through the country. This deep valley system is a world away from the highlands. It contains fertile lowlands rich in lakes, making it a major centre for agriculture. In fact, a series of important lakes called the Rift Valley lakes dominate the land south of the capital. Speaking of the capital, let's talk about Addis Ababa. Its name literally means new flower, and it sits almost right in the centre of the country, acting as the nation's beating heart. Addis Ababa is a vital hub for all of Africa. The city is home to the headquarters of the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, a culmination of Ethiopia's historic support for Pan-African cooperation and decolonisation efforts. So, do you have a favourite part of this rugged landscape you'd want to see on a visit? Give it a shout out in the comments down below. With history and geography done, it's time we talk about the serious stuff. You know, the ones that actually drive the nation in the 21st century. It's the economy. For decades, Ethiopia ran on a state-led development model that, while achieving wins like expanding potable water access and cutting the poverty rate from 39% to 24% by 2016, ultimately stalled out. It relied on unsustainable debt and choked out private investment, leading to poverty creeping back up to 32%. That all changed in 2018 when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed started a massive shift toward economic liberalisation. And this means opening strategic sectors like telecommunications and banking to foreign competition, and, crucially, floating the Ethiopian birr in July 2024. This currency float was painful, immediately causing the birr to devalue by over 30% and pushing inflation to 17.5%. But it was a necessary step that allowed Ethiopia to access massive international funding, including a $3.4 billion deal from the IMF and G20 debt relief. The results are showing. Ethiopia is now Africa's second most populous market, with over 130 million people and one of its fastest growing economies. It saw an estimated GDP growth of 8.1% last fiscal year, with the IMF projecting another strong 7.2% for 2025. Foreign investors are noticing too, with foreign direct investment, or FDI, rising by 5.6% in the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. Despite this impressive growth, there is one huge urgent challenge: job creation. Ethiopia is an incredibly young country with a median age under 20. Its labour market is exploding, with over 2 million job seekers entering the workforce every year, which is why experts say the country needs to create more than 10,000 jobs every single day just to keep up. So why is this critical? Because mass unemployment among young people is a recipe for social unrest. The government recognises this and is focused on unleashing the private sector as the real engine. They recently passed a Startup Act and launched a $36 million startup fund to encourage entrepreneurs. On top of that, they are also investing heavily in the digital economy, training youth through initiatives like the 5 Million Coders program. Analysts believe this tech growth could add up to $10.8 billion to the country's GDP by 2028. But right now, we're looking at a GDP of $109 billion in 2025. While Ethiopia remains one of the world's poorest nations, with a per capita income of $1,020, the key task now is making sure that robust 7.2% growth translates into productive jobs and better lives for its huge youth population. That was a serious deep dive into the numbers. And you deserve a break. So now let's talk about the fun stuff. Culture. Ethiopia is a linguistic powerhouse, boasting about 90 to over 100 languages and indigenous dialects. These languages fall into 4 major groups, but don't worry, you don't need to learn them all. While Amharic is the country's official national language, you'll also hear locals using English, Arabic, Italian and French, especially in urban areas. Now, that linguistic diversity is echoed in the numerous ethnic groups that call Ethiopia home. For example, some of the largest groups include the Oromo and the Amhara, alongside groups like the Tigray, Somali, and others. This mosaic of peoples gives Ethiopia its incredible variety in art, tradition, and regional customs. And nowhere is that clearer than at the dinner table. The true star of every Ethiopian meal is injera. Injera is a massive sourdough flatbread, often described as having a spongy texture. Since Ethiopians eat with their hands, injera acts as your utensil. You simply tear off a piece and use it to scoop up the rich stews that are served on top of it. Speaking of those stews, they are absolutely delicious. They mostly consist of vegetables, but you'll find notable local foods like shiro bi kibe, a thick, rich legume stew, and Doro Wat, a savoury chicken stew, usually served with a hard boiled egg. Trust me, after a long day of exploring, tearing off a piece of injera and dipping it into a spicy Doro Wat is pure heaven. Okay, put your hands down for a second because we have to talk about the drink that conquered the world. You might already know this, but Ethiopia is the original home of coffee. The story begins in the forest of the highlands, where the Coffea arabica plant still grows wild. The name coffee itself is even thought to be derived from the Kaffa region in southwestern Ethiopia, where the beans were first discovered. Today, coffee is not just a drink, it's a national pride and a massive economic engine, accounting for a huge 65% of all of Ethiopia's export earnings. Most Ethiopian coffee is produced by hand in the small farm or cottage system. This method alone is responsible for about 95% of all production, involving some 700,000 coffee smallholders. The sheer variety and quality have earned Ethiopian coffee a reputation as one of the finest and most flavourful in the world. And because coffee is so crucial, you may be invited to witness or participate in an intricate traditional coffee ceremony. This isn't just brewing, it's a social ritual, and the time devoted to it shows just how important the drink is. From the dawn of humanity and the myths of ancient kings to a modern economy racing to empower its youth, Ethiopia's story is an unparalleled epic of resilience and incredible cultural depth. So if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely love this next one.